Council, today is Tuesday, November 18th, 2025 at 6 p.m. and I will call this regular City Council meeting to order. Council or manager, are there any adjustments to the agenda? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one adjustment which I emailed the council about. I won't speak too much about it, but if you would add an consent agenda item 4F to authorize free parking for the holidays, and Tracy Lewis from the partnership is here to talk about that at Visitors and Communications. And then I feel a little embarrassed about this one, but item 8D should be discuss the FY27 budget survey. We are in FY26, so I can't believe we're that far, but that's just a technical error on the agenda.
So noted. Council, anything for you? Okay, then a motion to approve the agenda as amended would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Thank you very much. Under Visitors and Communications, anyone wishing to address the council regarding an item that is not on the agenda? Tracy, I'll do you during the consent agenda. Is that okay? Okay. Fantastic. So hearing and saying no one, council will move on to the consent agenda. We'll be approving the minutes for the meeting of 11/5/25. We will be approving one license on behalf of the clerk's office. That is the Queer Craft Fair on 12/06/25. That does have the requisite approvals, and it was in your packet. We'll be approving Resolution 2025-24. That is a master equipment lease purchase agreement. This is required pursuant to the fire department self-contained breathing apparatus equipment that was previously approved by the council.
Yep, correct.
We will be approving a $5,000 donation from the Brewster Trust to Capstone Emergency Heating Program. And I wanted to note also, council, and thank you very much, you had approved a $5,000 allocation for emergency SNAP gap funding. Thankfully, that was not needed the way things worked out. So I just wanted to make that notation. I was speaking with Carol about that earlier. That money is available. That $5,000 will be available in the Brewster Trust if it is so needed. Okay with that, Carol? Okay. And council, you will be authorizing the manager to execute two contracts. One is with DEW, $356,505 for construction management services relative to the Public Works Garage. This contract was a result of a competitive bid process. 4 contracts were received and were reviewed by our architect and our management team. The recommendation to award to DEW was unanimous. Under the other, there are actually 2 contracts for consideration. One is with Freeman, French, and Freeman, $250,695 for construction documents, and one with Rearch, $112,680 for design build services. The city will be executing only one contract. The preference presented by the manager is a design build contract, the less expensive contract, but we're waiting for USDA confirmation that the design build preference is grant eligible. So both of those contracts that you did receive the briefing on were subject to a competitive bid process. The design build contracts were reviewed and scored by Tom Baker, and Buildings and Facilities Committee members Charlie Atwood and Jeff Bergeron. The Rearch design build proposal was unanimously recommended, but again, we're waiting for confirmation from USDA. And then lastly, under item F, Tracy, how are you?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Tracy.
Good evening.
So typically, the partnership asks the city council to approve free parking in the downtown between Thanksgiving and the New Year. And so we are requesting for free parking from Friday, November 28th through Wednesday, December 31st. Last year, we put bags over the meters, and in the past, we had put stickers on them, and they stuck and made a mess of the meters. So, but with the stickers, we were still able to get coins in there, and with the bags over them, we weren't. So I have a proposition of putting a red ribbon on it with a tag that says during the holidays, 2-hour free parking, and then any money that comes in during that time, I guess, would be up to your decision of who you would like to donate it to. I think in the past, we've done a couple different organizations, and I don't have any off the top of my head this year. So that is my request.
Fantastic. Any questions, council?
Have a
Sure.
comment.
Of course.
So being one of those people that have tried to take those stickers off, I appreciate you not going with the sticker idea and going really with being creative with the ribbon. I think that having that aspect of being able to donate whatever people feel like, putting into the meters gives a different level of love from Barre City. So thank you for putting that touch on there.
Yes.
Well, I'm assuming, because I don't carry a lot of change these days, so I don't put a lot of money in the meters, but you could still also pay with the app as well, I'm assuming? Yeah. And that money would also go?
Would capture it, yeah,
Okay.
during that period, yeah.
And
Yes, of course.
can we publicize in some way that the parking meters, you can put money in the meters and it will be donated to whoever we're going to donate?
Yeah, I think what we've done in the past is we've put it, I think I made it the Facebook banner page or picture of the website. So yeah, we'll get the word out about it. Regroup message,
too.
yeah.
I usually do a post about it as well on our social media. And then the sticker, we could add, like, if you do choose to donate, we could pick a donor and I could put it on the tag now, or completely up to you.
Can I make a suggestion?
Of course.
So we could kind of make it almost like a contest, for example. Each one of us could pick one of our own organizations within the community, and then somehow, maybe on the Facebook page, they could vote on, their particular organization, and maybe a way to get people involved and make it fun and, have a little holiday spirit with it.
What are the dates again?
It's the Friday, November 28th through Wednesday, December 31st.
So, how much revenue do you really think you're going to accumulate?
It's
Carol?
1,200, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Well-
it was, yeah.
When you're feeding
year
people
was-
$25 at a time, $1,200 makes a big difference. So,
Nice, good.
and so, hey, we're grateful to the people who,
Put money-
kudos for trying to come up with a creative solution to the stickers. Of course, Tracy, I so appreciate the work you do, but I'm imagining a blowing snowstorm and your ribbons.
Hopefully not.
Look, I'm rooting for you,
November
but,
28th.
and hey, if anyone out there has a better solution that you think would, I'm sure Tracy is all ears. Okay, so council, yes.
I would just add, Mayor, that it is downtown parking lots. It's only ribbon meter, so this doesn't mean you can park on the Plain Street lot, for example, without feeding the meters. So
Yeah.
just a
Anywhere
heads
where
up.
there's a red ribbon,
Yeah.
it will have the
And
2-hour.
it's the core downtown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And one last question. You said 2-hour free parking, so like people who are
I
paying.
don't know if Dee measures the time during the holidays.
Oh, she
I'm sure
does.
she does.
He does.
Yeah.
You need something to do.
No,
Yeah.
she's really good.
She's really good at her job.
So if you're an employee and you're thinking, look, we love our downtown employees, but if you're thinking you're going to park there all day, no, Dee's going to snag you, and then we'll have a $25 parking ticket to go towards the fund. So it's all good. Any other questions, council? Okay, that was item F on the consent agenda. If there's no other questions on the consent agenda, a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
And it's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Council, we're moving to 4A on the agenda. We'll be approving the city warrants of 11/19/25 and ratifying the week of 11/12/25. A motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, your abstention is noted.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Ms. City Clerk.
I just have one thing I want to talk about. Last week, we did send out challenge letters for the biannual voter checklist challenge. This week, I had 3 people contact, 2 came in. They thought it was a scam. I just want people to be very aware that this is a real thing. We're not trying to capture any personal information. We just want to make sure you are still in Barre City and you still want to participate in elections. You have a prepaid postcard enclosed in the letter questioning whether you're a resident. And the reason why you're being questioned is you have not voted in 2 general elections. Of course, the people that came in, I know I voted, but we have it captured that you haven't. But anyway, yes, you are still residents, but do you still want to be on the voter checklist? Just fill out the card, mail it in, bring it in. It's postage free. So just please know that it is not a scam. It is a real thing. And it's done every other year, odd years. So this is 2025. It will be done again in 2027. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And if someone doesn't respond and then they show up to vote, it's okay. We'll
Yes,
just
absolutely.
register them. They just show that they're a Barre City
Actually, they just
resident,
have
and
to
it's,
sign an affirmation that they are a resident.
all good.
Yep, and it's all good.
Okay,
And they become active
fantastic.
again. Yep.
Any questions for the city clerk? Okay, thank you, council. Then I will declare the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board in session. You have 2 licenses for consideration this evening. One is a second-class liquor license and one is a tobacco license. Both were submitted by Quality Market and both have the requisite approvals and were forwarded to council. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. The motion carries and the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board is adjourned. Mr. Manager,
Thank you, Mayor.
how was hockey?
Very good.
Good deal. You're
Always
like-
good.
You're like right into it now.
Yes, for the long haul at
And
this
the whole
point.
hat trick thing, you're just like.
This must have been a slow news day.
It's a beer league, I mean.
How many nights a week are going now?
4, yeah. So keeping it up. A couple updates for the council. FEMA demolitions are underway. I sent a regroup message out last week. They have started on the landslide properties, which makes sense. These were the properties that were the first to close. So 25 Oswald was number 1. They were working on 36 and 44 Pike Street today. And I think it's going to take them a little bit longer than they anticipated there, but this first round of demolitions will conclude with 106 Courier Street, either late this week or early next week. These are, so our staff helps with the site prep. So for example, Public Works might have marked out some utilities, but all the demo work is done by state contractors paid for by FEMA and the state. So just for reference, we closed on these properties in July or August. So we're about, 3 to 4 months between the closing and the demo for the ones that are, at least that's the timeline we've seen now. We have 3 pending closings in the next few weeks, and we expect to start getting more of these demolition permits coming through. As I said, we hit that 3 to 4 month period from the date of the closing, which seems to be the range they're working with. You may have heard, I saw some chatter about it, of some work at the BOR that was done last week, some cancellations. We had to repair the brine pump, and we had to fix some leaking equipment underground, in the underground or undersurface piping system that keeps the ice frozen. This is not related to the header project we completed last summer. The header's working terrific. This is just the underground piping that sort of feeds the chemicals that keep the place cold. So it has been repaired, it's fixed, it's repainted, everything's back to normal. Kudos to the facility staff for troubleshooting this. This is, as I mentioned before, this is our most profitable, if you want to call it that, facility on the hill. It gets the most use. And so they were able to have this done. This was a good time for that problem to happen before high school games start happening, et cetera. So canceled a few practices, but everything's back to order for the people who are frequent visitors of the BOR. just a heads up, sort of similar to Clerk Mativier's warning, there's been somebody impersonating a code enforcement staff member in the city. We've heard from some merchants about this. A merchant was contacted by a person threatening an inspection and asking for direct payment. We've heard of this happening in other communities as well. Just, our staff will never ask for payment. During that code enforcement piece or in person during the inspection, we ask people to familiarize yourself with the fire department code enforcement team. There's only really 2 people on the code enforcement team, Nick and Arthur, and the deputy chief will help them out from time to time. So it's not a huge team to be familiar with, but those are the 3 people you might see doing that kind of work. We also encourage people to work with trusted contractors for that life safety work done on their properties, and of course, contact the police department if they suspect any suspicious activity. Winter parking rules are in effect. They were in effect as of the 15th. We're continuing last year's pilot of forecast-dependent bans. I've heard from a lot of people who are very happy with it last year, so we're going to try to make it work. The key to this is that it's incumbent on residents to find a way to get informed and stay informed about when the bans are in effect. Last year, it was a little bit bumpy where we had a little bit higher tow rates in the first couple days of bans. It evened out and got back to normal as we went through the season, but we certainly want to avoid that. Our goal, as I've said before, we don't want to get rich on towing people. We just want to plow streets. So we really just want to encourage compliance so that our plow truck drivers can do their job and keep the roads passable. So the other reminder for longtime residents is the ban is now from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. We changed that last year in ordinance. The bans used to start at 1 a.m. We added the 2 extra hours. One, it's easier to communicate it because technically the ban is, the ban date would always be the following day when it was 1 a.m. So that was just really tough to get the message across to people. Now you can basically, it's easier for us to just get the message out of when your car should not be on the street. Second of all, it allows our plow truck drivers to get an earlier start in plowing. So remember, it's 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. and there's temporary parking at the BOR during parking bans, and it's only during the ban. So this is not the BOR gets a lot of use, as I said. This is not a permanent place to keep your vehicle. If a ban is in effect and until the ban is lifted, people are certainly welcome to have their car up there. There's signage up there. You just basically park the first instance in the row right next to the BOR. So far so good, and just encourage people to really stay informed. And of course, the best way to do that is by signing up for Regroup, which you can do by visiting our website and clicking the banner at the top. And then finally, just a brief comment on the contract you approved, Council. Thank you on the DPW Garage Construction Management Firm. We really excited about the results of this procurement. The timeline for work to begin on the site is April, and they expect a 7 to 8 months timeline to get us moved in. So we are very, very, very excited about getting started with DEW and having a ribbon cutting with the golden shovels in April with everybody. So very happy to see that keep moving forward. And that's it for me.
Questions, Council? Yes.
The pipes underneath the BOR,
Yes.
is it like a crawl space? Did you have to melt part of the ice? I'm just trying to picture this.
The leak was fortunately in the section of the rink that we can access through panels. We had to isolate one section. So for example, I was there for my kids' practice last week, and there was one strip of the ice closest, the boards closest to the stands, that had sort of melted because we had to sort of isolate it, and so the chemical was not running up and down that section, and that made it just the water not freeze. So it's probably a longer term issue to do some longer term harder work on the whole piping system under there. Luckily, we were able to isolate this and access it from panels over by the Zamboni doors.
The majority of the pipes are actually in the concrete.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're encased
Yep.
in concrete. And generally, they don't corrode and they last a very long time. But the sections that are outside the concrete, because they're subject to the elements, those will corrode. Yeah, I got a crash course. Most people didn't realize that the government was shut down, but everyone knew that the ice at the BOR was melting. I'm like, it's like, okay, I get it, we're doing our best. Yes, Counselor.
Question about the, someone impersonating a code enforcement officer. Are they, do they carry, like, I'm sure they look like code enforcement, but
They're
do they have a
uniformed.
badge? I mean, they're
Yeah.
in uniform?
Yep, they wear a uniform, they have a badge on.
Ours do, I don't know, the
Yeah.
impersonator.
No, I didn't mean the I meant like the.
Oh, ours do,
people
yes.
that show up,
Correct.
so you could say, where's your badge? Where's your-"
Exactly.
They rarely just show up. As a courtesy, they'll always call you. And, you know, if you have any doubts, I mean, just say, do you mind if I call you back? And if you call the non-emergency number at the fire department, you can hit their extension and they'll pick up the phone. And if it's not them, then you'll know you're being scammed. So, you know, we don't, and we certainly don't, we don't ask for money. It doesn't work that way. So, but great question. Thank you for asking it. Anything else for the manager council? Okay, then we will
Mr.
move on
Mayor?
to new business. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question. So just to be specific, any payment that would be going to the city would be going directly through the clerk's office, treasurer's?
Yeah, if there's anything that comes of a fine or a fee or something of that nature, that would be paid
It's
to
a
the clerk's
process.
office.
I mean,
Right.
you don't pay for the inspection.
Right.
If you're a landlord, for example, you pay $50 per unit per year, you pay that in May. And that is your inspection fee, and you'll be inspected on average once every 3 years. If you're a restaurant, you know, or a commercial establishment, you don't pay at all. That's actually included if, for example, if you were doing work on your building, that was included in your permit fee. So you don't actually pay at all if you have a number of infractions, you can be fined. That rarely happens. Usually Nick will say, I'm going to give you 30 days, depending on the level of infraction. If you're a big apartment building with no smoke and fire detectors, you're probably getting fined right then and there, and you should.
And in that instance.
Yeah, but
where
you
the-
don't, we don't ask for money.
But where- so-
And we sure don't ask for money up front.
In that instance, though, they still wouldn't pay a code
Right.
enforcement.
No,
correct,
It
correct.
There's
would
a
always
process.
go through City Hall.
All the money's received through here.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So just blanket statement that no matter who is asking to be paid, it's always going to be paid through that office.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, all of our, Nick Copping is the consummate professional. He must have his little speech memorized, because every time I meet him at a building, he introduces himself to me. And I'm like, I know who you are. I knew your dad, he was a wonderful man. But he introduces himself to me, gives me a card. So, no, if it doesn't feel right to you, then, yeah, don't take the call. Any other questions for the manager, council? Then we will move on to item 8A on the agenda. This is volunteer appointments. We are, Tracy, you're first up. So, council, this is, we'll be interviewing 3 candidates for the newly created Neighborly Barre Committee. So we'll be interviewing Tracy, Joanne Reynolds, and Ernie Drown. Tracy, how are you?
I'm good.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested.
Tracy Lewis, I'm the executive director of the Barre Partnership. I've been the director of the Barre Partnership for 6 years. I think this initiative is a great thing for the partnership to be a part of and to help promote the things that the committee wants to do. And I'm excited to be a part of the committee.
Fantastic. Questions, council? So usually I ask Tracy if you're familiar with the committee and whether you're prepared to meet the time demands, as a committee member. This is a new committee, so I can't ask that question. So are you going to play nice?
I'm going to play nice.
Okay, good. Council, motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. Any other questions, council? All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Thank you very much, Tracy, and thank you for everything you do around the city. Looking forward to very merry holidays and kicking that off. That's always a great time. Thank you again. And you're welcome to stay, you know that, but if you'd prefer not to, We understand, you've had a long day. Joanne, I think I saw Joanne on the line.
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, thank you. Joanne, you want to do the same? Tell us a little bit about your interest in the committee?
Absolutely. I'm Joanne Reynolds. I'm a retiree, 5 years coming up. And I'm interested in this committee. Oops, sorry. Mostly because I spend a lot of time in town and in the city, I should say. And I'm really excited about the idea of creating some special things and special events for people to make them feel like we're a closer community than what they might be feeling today. Um, and, I've actually had the pleasure of talking with Beth at length about, and Sonia, about the idea and sort of what their thoughts were in making the proposal. And I'm excited about it. I think it'll be fun, interesting, and something different. And as a
Fantastic,
retiree, I have a lot of time, so.
thank you. Council, any questions? So ditto, like I said, it's a new committee, so I can't ask you if you're prepared to meet the time constraints because we don't quite know what they are yet. But you'll play nice, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. Council, motion would be in order, yes.
And Mayor, sorry, just one point. If the council could, I had suggested, we try to stagger terms. So I had suggested a couple, maybe 2 people for 2-year terms and 1 person for a 1-year term. That way we sort of keep the balance. So if the council, I sort of put Tracy
So
down
these
to
are-
27.
So this, Tracy's was a 27-term council in terms of the mover and seconder. Any issue with doing that way after the fact? Okay, council, if there's any objection, we can revote it, but that was an appointment until 2027. And Joanne's appointment would be,
Either 26 or 27.
what would you like, Joanne?
Oh, give me the 27.
Ernie, you just got preempted, I'm really sorry.
Something tells me.
No, it's all good. Council, a motion would be in order.
So,
Thank you. Second, please?
Second.
You got a second? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded, council. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Thank you, Joanne, appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ernie, how are you? It's all yours. Yeah.
I'm Ernie Brown. I'm also a retiree. My family's been in Barre for a long, long, long time. And anything that I can do to make this a better, happier, friendlier place, I would like to have a shot at that. I think this is a great proposal, and we've just begun thinking about how we can tap into all the service organizations in the city and do some brainstorming to get some things going. Cookie stands on the street. So I have the time.
Fantastic. So you have the time, and you'll play nice,
I-
and it'll all be
very
good.
nice.
Okay, council, the motion will be in order.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? This was a 2026 appointment, correct? Until 2026. Fantastic. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, appreciate you serving, Ernie. Thank you. Motion carries. Council, we will move on to item 8B on the agenda. This is the first reading warned for 6:45. Well, that's okay. You know what?
We want to jump ahead?
If you don't mind, Councilor
The next
Guston,
one is
may I?
quick, so yeah.
We set the agenda.
Oh.
Oh, I hate this crap.
Can we move to?
No, we're going to go ahead with the
Okay.
hearing, and if anyone shows up, I will keep an eye on things. If anyone shows up, we will do it over again.
I may have a proposal for delay. Are you here to speak to an item on the agenda?
Yes, and I am afraid you might have talked about it in the first 5 minutes. I'm one of the organizers of the Queer Craft Fair, and we had submitted a plan for.
Oh.
Oh,
You're approved.
you're already approved.
Because we'd seen seen that, you know, some folks, but anyway, great, yay.
You're good. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry to jump in there. I thought it might give us some time, but it didn't.
So why don't we, we'll move ahead with the first reading. I mean, I suspect realistically, Nicholas, this is still a little bit of a work in progress in terms of staff.
Yes.
So you may be seeing this come back for a first reading at a later date, depending on whether any changes are substantive. So, Nicholas, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Council, this is a first reading draft of the nuisance property ordinance that uses the St. Albans ordinance passed in December as a model. We worked with the city attorney to, as I said, use the St. Albans ordinance as a basis, but then to add some provisions that were discussed by the council at the November 5 meeting. I think the biggest one of those was that this proposed ordinance is not limited to rental properties. This proposed ordinance applies to any property. There's a little bit of a difference in terms of the consequences that might occur as a result of being a private property, owner-occupied property versus rental, but the ordinance as a whole applies to all properties in Barre, and I think that was a very valid point that was raised when we discussed this, that not necessarily rental properties are the focus of nuisance issues. I'm happy to walk through the core constructs of the ordinance. Starting with, there's a section 26-3 on definitions. A public nuisance is defined as a property where citations or factual basis for 3 or more criminal citations happen within a 90-day period. It also refers to a property on which, or within 200 feet, a person associated with that property engaged in nuisance behaviors. Also 3 citations within a 90-day period. And a property on which had factual basis for civil violations under Code of Ordinances. The definitions also exempt 3 types of citations, and that is those that are related to domestic violence against a tenant or an occupant, acts involving potential child neglect, or stalking of an owner or tenant of the property, with the idea being there that you don't want to incentivize people not to report those things or punish them for those types of events happening on the property. There's a couple more boilerplate definitions of what a property owner, which is the person who's has the vested title, a person associated with. I think this is another one to focus on. We know from our police department, I think you've heard from Chief Vale on this in a couple times, where sometimes the people who are associated with the nuisances that we're dealing with are not from Barre. Sometimes they're transient people moving from house to house. And so we thought it was important to have this person associated with construct, because there should be also at some point after we've had 3 or more citations, some accountability for the people who are being allowed into a home or into a property or into a rental unit. And so there should be some accountability for that. If there's a person, let's say there has been someone who's been cited twice for a violation, who's not from here, and they come and they do it a 3rd time. That at that point there has to be some sort of accountability for that person being, sort of allowed to be in that property to continue to create those nuisances. The code enforcement team is the enforcement mechanism for this ordinance, and we cite a section of ordinance which defines the code enforcement team as city manager and the chief code enforcement officer. So that would be myself and Chief Cushman. And we would, of course, work across the board. This is an ordinance that would involve not just Chief Cushman, myself, but also Nick Copping, the Chief Vale, the police department. This is, we had to have sort of an enforcement mechanism in the ordinance as the points of responsibility, but in reality, this is going to be, an ordinance that's going to be implemented with staff from across the city. Then we get into sort of the meat and potatoes of what the ordinance does. If three citations occur within that 90-day period, the code enforcement team, and if the code enforcement team has a reasonable basis to believe a property is a nuisance property, then we would notify the owner, request a meeting to address the conditions, and work on a nuisance abatement plan. If a nuisance abatement plan can be agreed to collaboratively with the property owner, terrific. That owner would have 45 days to implement it. We would monitor its implementation, and if it happens, or if there's significant progress to it happening, and we know that we have confidence that it will, then great. This issue has been addressed, and we move forward. If there is no resolution, if we cannot come to an agreement on a nuisance abatement plan, or if it's not complied with, then it gets kicked up to a city council public nuisance property hearing, and which would be a quasi-judicial hearing where all parties would have an opportunity to be heard, all parties would have an opportunity to be represented and provide testimony. The city would have the burden of proof to show that this is in fact a nuisance property. And at that point, the council would issue a decision that could find on the side of the city or could find on the side of the property owner. In terms of the consequences that the council could enact, it would be you could order the owner to make improvements to the property, such as building or property repairs, maintenance, lighting, cameras, security system, limiting access to common areas, no trespassing people. I know we had a big discussion about that this summer, obviously, in terms of what the city can do with no trespass issues, but as a private property owner, they have greater rights with that regard. So if we're talking about the person associated with who may not be a resident, may not be a tenant, that would be something that the council could then look at in terms of requiring. The biggest stick in this ordinance would be that the council could require or direct that the certificate of occupancy for the property be removed, which would require that it not be inhabited anymore. So that's the biggest stick that we have in this ordinance. Those consequences that I just talked about would apply to rental units or commercial properties. There's a section, the next section in the ordinance has a slightly different consequence. We can't do the certificate of occupancy for an owner-occupied building, but we could escalate that in the Judicial Bureau at that point instead of the certificate of occupancy, excuse me. There's some penalties associated with failure to comply with a city council decision, and those are first violation of $250 with a waiver of $165, second violation of $500 with a waiver of $325, and each separate day would constitute a separate violation. One thing I would note that is not in this draft that was contained in the St. Albans ordinance is anything related to evictions. The city attorney advised us against meddling in third-party contracts that could create different and new liabilities for the city. For example, if we could never force an eviction anyway, but we had looked at a version that talked about encouraging the starting of eviction proceedings. City attorney discouraged that as well, because if that is in an order and the tenant is evicted, we could become liable, for example, for lost rent, right? So I think the bigger stick here is the certificate of occupancy revocation, which is a pretty important point of leverage that the city would have in the enforcement of these cases. So this is the draft. I think that we're still, as the mayor mentioned, we're still fine-tuning it ourselves from the staff perspective, making sure we can make this happen. We feel generally comfortable with this construct, but there may be changes. I did talk to Treasurer Dawes earlier today. She did mention that what we normally do in a case of a ordinance coming back with revision is it would be advanced to a second reading. We could have as many second readings as we would want, that it wouldn't revert to a first reading. So that's just for process-wise. If the council chooses to move forward, that's what we would do. We could move it to second reading and keep it there until it's at a point where the council's ready to enact it. So happy to answer questions. Like I said, I welcome any suggestions to make this stronger and work in progress that we hope to fine-tune and get to a place where we all feel great with it.
Counsel? Yes.
I have just a couple of questions. One is under 26-4C, which is when it starts the sort of conversation between the code enforcement and the property owner. And I don't have an answer for this, but part of what I don't want to see happen is in a situation where the property owner is a landlord, I don't want to see the landlord like not involve the tenant in the fix or not involve them in the conversation. I guess I would hate to see something the city does result in sort of an unfair eviction or unfair consequences for a tenant if it's actually the property owner problem. So I don't know if the solution is to get the tenant in the conversation sooner or include in here language saying that if it is a tenanted property, that they also be involved in this early conversation so that they understand their rights and responsibilities in this process. And I think this goes for commercial, residential, across the board. Anyone who's renting a space, I think, should understand that something is going on with the property that they're renting.
Yeah, I see that's a good point. I mean, I know that when it gets to the council level, the tenants have a role, and I think,
Later, but
I think you're right that there may be a role here, and it may be as simple as, the meeting includes property owner, landlord, and tenant. I think, I don't see an immediate issue with it. Just for clarification on, obviously on an ordinance of this magnitude, we're going to run all changes by the city attorney. So unless they point out something that might be problematic, I don't see an issue with it.
And practically speaking, again, having been on, the inspection end and having dealt with Mr. Copping and others, they're usually pretty good if there's some sort of investigation. For example, we had an instance where a tenant had removed smoke detectors, even though it says right in the lease that every tenant my personal tenants are required to test their smoke. You push a button and you test it monthly. And it says that the tenant is required to change the batteries every 6 months. If they can't change the batteries, they're required to notify me, and I will come change the batteries for them. And a tenant had decided they would just remove a smoke detector that was malfunctioning. Mr. Copping didn't have sharp words for me, but he had sharp words for the tenant. And he told that, so I think there is some balance there. And I think probably, again, depending on what the investigation is, again, knowing how thorough they are and having dealt with them, they would probably involve the tenant if it was appropriate for the tenant to be involved. If this was purely a landlord issue, although we talk about criminal citations, like when you talk about repairs and things like that, and I did have the opportunity to speak to some folks in St. Albans about how well received this was, how effective they feel it's been. A lot of it was centered around criminal activity, drug activity, and that's what they were looking to discourage. I don't know what kind of conversation Mr. Copping might have with someone who has been cited 3 times for, possession of drugs, dealing drugs. I don't know what kind of conversation he'd have with that. I'm fine with it. But like I said, they're usually pretty thorough in their investigation.
yeah, and I totally understand that there may be situations where it's not appropriate to involve the tenant, but I guess I would hate to have a tenant not be involved in a process that might lead to the place they live
I
or
agree.
rent being non-occupied
Maybe-
at a future date. So again, as I said, I don't really have like a good suggestion for the end language, but I'm wondering if there's something that could.
And I'm just scribbling here, maybe it's at the discretion of the code enforcement team, something to that effect.
If the issues apply,
And, maybe for the second reading,
Yeah.
if I might, I'd like to have Mr. Copping.
Yeah, of course.
And have the code enforcement
Yeah.
folks come in so that
Great.
they can talk about how they see this as, an additional resource to solve problems in the city. Yes, either, Councilor Spaulding.
So my issue is the same issue I had last time we spoke about this. And I mentioned, well, you have the Tilden House and North Barry Manor.
Yep.
And Officer Chief Vale shook his head, agreeing with me that there's a lot more going on in those 2 buildings than singling out landlords. I guess My issue is, are they gonna be treated the same as a landlord? This is Vermont Housing Authority, whoever owns those buildings. I mean, you're talking large parcels with a lot of apartments, a lot of revenue, okay, but they have problems for a fact. And instead of just concentrating, I mean, I've owned multiple apartment houses, but you would think that the bigger boy, like the Barre Housing Authority, probably not a good word, but are they gonna be treated the same? I mean,
They would be subject to this ordinance, and I would imagine, I hear from, we talk about some of the issues that happen at Barre Housing Authority with their staff, and I know sometimes they're just as frustrated as we are, that sometimes their hands are tied in terms of what they can do with problem tenant, nuisance tenants. And so I think, I would imagine that for an organization, so let me just say, number one, that the St. Albans ordinance applies to their equivalent. Whatever their equivalent is, their ordinance applies to it. So we would imagine that ours is drafted with that intent as well. And I would imagine that for a tenant, and a landlord like that, who probably wants to be a more responsible landlord, that having the teeth of a nuisance abatement plan from the city of Barre might be what they need to do some of those things and to enforce some of those things. So, Barre Housing Authority is one of the prime examples of where person associated with is the problem, right? It's not necessarily the residents, it's the people that are associating with some of the residents. And so that might be enough of a hook to give Barre Housing Authority the ability to say, John Smith cannot come in here anymore. We have a nuisance abatement plan from the city of Barre that says.
covers all.
That covers that so-and-so cannot be in this building. And so, to answer your basic question, Counselor, it applies to them because that's what happened in St. Albans. And my hope would be that for someone for Barre Housing Authority staff, which I know shares some of the frustrations, they might welcome visits from us saying, you can't do this anymore because it's a nuisance. And I hope that they see it that way.
Yes.
So my question is, I have a few questions, but along that same line, when you look at something like the Barre Housing Authority, or you look at the other properties that are multi-units, and you think about how many times citations and police calls happen, are we talking about like for a given tenant, a given person or apartment that's being, because, if they're getting called to Tilden House multiple times, but it's only because of this one tenant, or it's, what's Green Acres or Highgate or something, and there's fire, there's ambulance, they're getting called there maybe for a variety of reasons, maybe all legitimate reasons, except for this one particular unit, that's the problem. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think, and
The fire would be okay, that's not criminal.
I'm just saying, I think we have to be careful about property, because
yeah, I
then
think that's a great point. I think that's a great point, Councilor Spalding. And I went right to the definition, and I think it's not adequate to capture that issue in the bigger units like Barre Housing. And so I think what I would say, A, is that this ordinance doesn't address that, so thank you for making that point. And B, my instinct would be to say that it is unit-based in those bigger places like North Barre Manor. Right? So, because you're right, we could probably trigger it every night. Probably.
Yeah.
So I would explore language that talks about definition of a unit for those larger buildings.
Multi-unit.
I think we might want to figure out a threshold, because for, if you have a 4-unit building where 2 of the tenants are problematic, you might not want to leave it to the unit level if there's that level. It might, maybe it's, I don't know, and I don't know what the right unit level is. I'd probably talk to Janet and Nick about this.
Yeah.
But maybe for units of 6 or more, it's at the unit level, 6 or less, it's at the property level.
Right.
I think we can
This
find.
is all, it's all discretionary. So,
Yeah.
in other words, that mere, so 3 or more criminal citations triggers Mr. Copping. Mr. Copping will be coming to see you. But if our code enforcement and building inspection team looks at what you're doing, I mean, let's face it, this is about criminal activity, mostly about drug activity, and giving all of us an additional tool to either shine a light on these nasty little drug dealers, because nasty little drug dealers don't like it when a light is shown on them, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to ratchet it up. So if Mr. Copping investigates it and says, look, this landlord is trying to evict this tenant, but the tenant keeps paying their rent. They write a check every month. The landlord doesn't want them there. They've been cited they have 4 pending citations for drug possession and drug sales. The landlord doesn't, and I can tell you, as a landlord, it is frustrating. Thankfully, I've never had, and it can happen to anyone, I've been fortunate enough to never have this sort of activity in a building that I own, and we've had 1 eviction in 35 years, knock on wood. But if Mr. Copping determines that, look, this landlord is doing everything they can do, they want them out, they're asking them to leave, the building is well maintained, the building is secure, there's nothing wrong with the building, it's just this tenant, even with the no trespass orders, we're going to struggle with that. I can guarantee you, because inasmuch as I don't like bad landlords, I don't like bad tenants, I am a staunch advocate for property rights. And if a tenant is renting from you, and you can issue a no trespass order for any reason. Now, obviously, you cannot discriminate against a protected class. You couldn't say, well, I don't like that person's race, so I don't want them coming in my building. But you can actually say, I just don't like that person, so I don't want them coming in my building. And you can trespass them. However, if you're leasing that unit to a tenant, that tenant also has rights. And if they say, well, look, this is my home, and and if I'm renting to Councilor Deering and I say, Councilor Deering, I don't like your sister, I just don't like her, and she can't come in here, you can look right at me and say, well, I'm sorry, Tom, but you're wrong, because I like her, I'm paying rent, this is my home, and she's welcome here. And guess what? You're right. So we're going to struggle with that one. But, I look at all of this, there's a lot about this ordinance that makes me a little uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, I trust our code enforcement team. If I didn't, this thing wouldn't see the light of day as far as I'm concerned. But I trust them to be judicious and fair, like when you talk about the housing authority and you say, well, are they going to be treated the same? Well, I hope not, because they're not the same. Some of those buildings have 90 units in them. They're not the same as a duplex. So, the intent here isn't to be unfair to anyone other than those engaging in criminal activity. And the intent here is to let them know in no uncertain terms, we don't want you here. We just don't want you engaging in criminal activity. So, I have a few, I'll give mine to you later. I had a few concerns, like I did question, do we have subpoena authority? I said the last time we talked about this, you talked about tenants, Councilor Guston. Well, if the tenant is a drug dealing problem, I'd like to be able to subpoena the tenant. I'd like to put them on camera and say, hey, well, okay, this is a person who's been cited 3 times. And interestingly, when you talk about citing, like I said, there's a lot about this ordinance that bothers me, but I trust Nicholas, I trust our team, so I'm willing to give them the latitude. A citation is not a conviction. And in America, you are innocent until proven guilty. So a cop writes 3 bogus citations and all of a sudden this is triggered. That's not quite fair. Yes, Councilor.
So I understand all that, and I agree with the main premise of the ordinance. I just want to make sure that we're protecting good tenants, we're protecting good landlords, and we're protecting ourselves.
Yeah.
So Mike, I sent a bunch of questions to the city manager as well, but a couple of things that I just want to make sure that we're not Well, one, that I understand what you're saying, Mayor. I want us to be clear and not just leave it up to discretion, or as clear as we can be, I should say. I mean, obviously, we can't rate every single instance. One of the things that I'm concerned about is calls or calls to a property. We know that there are exclusions already in there for domestic violence, but, you know, I don't want people to not feel comfortable calling if there's a medical emergency. I don't want them to think, oh gosh, we've already called twice. If we call again, we're going to get in trouble. Like, we have to have like something in there so that people understand, like, you should still call the police when you need help, or you should still call fire and EMS when you need help. And so I just want to make sure that that's clear. And then, there were a few other things. I just I'm mostly concerned about protecting people who are trying to do the right thing, landlords who are trying to do the right thing, and obviously us as a city, because I don't want us to get into any hot water either, so.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm sorry, who had their hand up? I wasn't.
I'm more recent.
Counselor.
So one suggestion would be, you could put, instead of a property, you could put per address. Because for example, like at Green Acres, mine's 24 Bergeron, Unit 13. So if you get, 3 citations for Unit 13, then then that could trigger this.
Yep.
And the same thing at like Tilden or any of the other larger density places. They all have a particular identifier with their address. So you could interchange that with the property. And it also helps with smaller buildings as well that have like apartment A or B. So that was my kind of take on that, at least the first.
Good suggestion.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
that could work, but do you get 3? Is it, I mean, was the intent, and again, I'd have to, I didn't ask this question of our counterparts in St. Albans, whether there were certain properties, multi-unit properties where, because if you think about it, in order for someone, if you think about a particular apartment, in order for someone to receive 3 citations, that's the trigger, 3 citations in a 90-day period, I mean, they'd have to be the dumbest drug dealer on the face of the earth. 3 citations in a 90-day period? That's, does that seem?
Yeah. I mean,
Remember, 3 citations, not 3 points of contact.
Right. Yeah.
So I get where you're going, but, again, Council, what I keep saying and where I've found my own comfort level with this is trusting the people that you work with. And granted, it may be a little easier for me because I've worked with, code enforcement on a professional level for 30 years. And I know them to be fair in terms of, how, and believe me, they certainly know who the bad landlords are. They know, I've spoken to them and they'll say, well, when I'm going to so-and-so's property, I'm looking forward to that. I see that come up on my list and I know I'm going to be in and out of there. I'm going to go through those 4 units in about, an hour and a half. And then another name pops up on my list and I say, this is not going to be a good day. And, so they know. So, again, it is about, and listen, our police officers have the same, latitude. If you're going 27 and a 25, they can certainly issue a warning. If you're going 30 and a 25, depending on the circumstances, they can issue a warning. There are certainly certain crimes for which our police officers do not issue warnings, but they always, they have that latitude in certain instances. So, like I said, my question was under section 26-5. Just wanted to know if the council had subpoena authority if we have a hearing. And then where you talked about under section E, 1 and 2, or 1 and 2, it says if the property is a rental unit or commercial property, and then under 2, it says if the property is a rental unit, owner occupied or commercial property.
Yeah, this was.
Aren't they kind of the same?
This
or
was
did you wanna-
confusing.
Did you want to strike in the second one? Did you want to strike, or did the
Rental
second one want to
unit.
say if the property is an owner-occupied property?
Yeah, I think that's the,
And the rest of them,
I think this was a belt and suspenders thing, but I agree that it's clunky,
Yeah,
and it should just be owner
because it
occupied.
captures.
Yeah.
It captures everything but owner-occupied in one, but
I
then it
agree.
captures everything in two.
Yeah, I agree.
And then under one, where we talked about, I'd like to see just a little bit of latitude there. I did it by simply saying, where it says, order the property owner to cause the property to cease being a public nuisance property, and to that end, order the property owner to perform necessary building or property repairs and maintenance, comma, possibly add lighting. Because, again, when they come up with the plan, it doesn't give them any latitude. It says you have to add lighting.
Yep.
Well, what if it's, first of all, what if it's a tenant issue, purely? You got a drug dealing tenant. That's the issue. Well, I don't know how lighting's going to stop them from, but they have no latitude to say, and also even with security cameras, if you don't have Wi-Fi access, the technology is getting better, with Starlink now. But if you don't have Wi-Fi, if the owner doesn't have Wi-Fi access at the property, not every property adapts itself well to surveillance cameras. And sometimes other tenants don't necessarily deserve surveillance cameras. It's not, they're kind of not the issue. So I thought just in one there, when you come up with the plan, give a little more latitude so that there's not a requirement to do certain things, and Nick would have more latitude to say, lighting isn't going to help, or cameras aren't going to, this isn't going to help. The problem is that tenant, and until you get rid of that tenant, it's kind of interesting. I spent some time with, and I apologize for digressing a bit, but it's relevant. I spent some time with Lieutenant Governor John Rogers, and we were having a discussion about legislation that they will be introducing relative to landlord-tenant laws. And this is in instances where you have a house where folks are there trying to maintain they're recovering. They're in recovery, and they're trying to maintain a life of sobriety. And you have 5 or 6 people living there. And everyone's sobriety is really dependent upon everyone maintaining sobriety. So you have one tenant who comes off the rails. That not only puts, obviously, that tenant is at risk, but you've just put the other 6 or 10 people who are there trying to maintain their sobriety, you've put them in imminent risk of not being able to maintain their sobriety. So they're trying to streamline the eviction laws to say, no, you can get them out really fast. If you can, we can fast track this, and if you can show that they're putting other people in harm's way because of their behavior. And it was interesting when he was telling me about that. And again, I really respect tenant rights, I respect landlord rights, but the situation at Highgate and Green Acres all summer long, Councilor Deering, I was frustrated, I was angry that, folks just want to raise their kids in peace, and they're not able to because you have one bad tenant out of 60 who is constantly dealing drugs. And, so I'm hopeful when we get to the point in our program this evening where we talk about a few, we kick off at least the legislative priority, we'll be having the big discussion later on, but one of mine is not a whole lot of latitude for people who are, dealing drugs and I don't care if it's public housing, I don't care where it is, not a whole lot of latitude in terms of, look, you've been cited or you've been convicted, time for you to go. So, Council, what would you like to do?
Sorry.
Yes, of course.
Did you have some things too? I have a few questions.
Of course.
I just had something, in all this discussion about, I understand the drug issue concerns, but to Councilor Spalding's point about not frightening people about calling, is there a way that we can, somebody, if there's an overdose, somebody should be called, even if it's a drug, it's a drug issue and it's an illegal so some kind of carve out that makes it clear that we're really more interested in the people who are dealing drugs, getting them out than we are necessarily. And I mean, as long as it's not a situation of a group living home where everybody's sobriety depends on it, on punishing people who are addicted.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but just to be clear, calling for emergency services would not, even calling the police, I mean, you've got to have a citation. So,
Yeah, yeah.
we'd have to let people know that, look, if your neighbor is dealing drugs and there are people in and out, and you want to call the police, I don't think I don't think a good landlord would be mad at you. A good landlord would feel a level of responsibility, and straight up, there are bad landlords who own property in Barre City. And, so if we have to call that landlord on the carpet a little bit and say, look, you're going to work with us or work with the other tenants, you have a responsibility to them, I'm not a whole lot sympathetic. And again, I just trust our enforcement team to do the right thing. They know the difference between a good actor and a bad actor. They know the difference between someone who is sincere and someone who will rent to anyone to make a buck. And for those of us, who have rented property in the past, I mean, there have been instances where, I've shown an apartment and a tenant has said, well, I pay in cash, is that okay? And I say, well, normally we'd like to, if you want to do it that way, we can just sweep money from your bank account, we can do it EFT. No, I pay in cash. And then you give them a little contact information sheet so that they can fill out, where do you work? Well, I don't work. And then you're looking at a $40,000 Mercedes with blacked out windows, and I just look at them and say, I'm just not comfortable continuing this, sorry. And they always threaten to sue you, and I just say, bring it, I got people waiting. I just trust I trust our enforcement team to do the right thing and to not, and we certainly don't want people to not call. If you're a victim, if you're feeling threatened, if you're a landlord and you need help, that's not the purpose. Nick is not going to do that to you. Let's assume that it's not Nick, it's someone who's not Nick-like. We, as the city council, we do call the shots here. Nicholas is not going to let them do that to someone who's being victimized, someone who needs help. We're here to help, but we got to have the tools to do something. Amy, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering, trying to think through how this affects neighbors. So, in the part where it's defining the property where things go wrong, it talks about a 200-foot radius. And in some parts of the city, we have such small lots, either in all dimensions or one dimension, that 200 feet goes on to a lot of other lots. And then there's the other section where it talks about adjoiners, and that seems more like it's about adjacent property owners. So those are two different ways of measuring kind of neighbors who are involved in something. So I don't have an exact question or answer, but I'm just wondering how to best think about what the radius of where things are happening. If someone's standing on their neighbor's property, misbehaving or whatever. And then there's also the kind of who gets involved in the hearing process. So I don't know where this came from, where I'd be interested in the logic on that. And then my other question was just, we have other kind of nuisance ordinances for things like trash and vacant buildings and, junk vehicles and that kind of stuff. Does that kind of problems from those filter into this process too? They're part of the count of creating a nuisance?
I can answer those. Yeah, so yes, those, just to answer your last question first, yes, they could. The Code of Ordinances is the last, is in the nuisance property definition. The 200 feet issue is related to a person associated with that property. So for example, if somebody is being a nuisance at your house, Amy, but they're associated with your house, but they're creating a nuisance at your neighbor's yard, the citation still ties to your property. Does that make sense? So it's sort of the idea being that they're either an owner, tenant, or a visitor of a particular household, and they are cited for one of the nuisance behaviors, and if they do that, if you get, that would count as a citation if they're associated with you because you invited them over, or they're your relative, or something to that effect.
That answer your question, Amy? Oh, I guess it did. Yeah?
I think so. I just kind of have to think through it.
Yeah, I mean, the
More exactly
200
how it
feet
works.
thing,
I mean,
that
I've had
bugged
issues
me
with,
as well.
like just picturing a 200-foot radius and thinking about how that works with neighbors. And partly I was
Yeah.
thinking that people in that radius might have input or an interest in a hearing. And then also like in that 200-foot radius, it kind of gets at the discussion you had earlier about how to deal with like multi-unit buildings, in particular where those are kind of dense. Like, anyway, I would have to think about this more exactly. I don't have a well-defined question there, but it's two different ways of measuring who the neighborhood is.
It's a work in progress. I mean, I thought of the same thing. Counselor Spalding runs a tight ship. Her tenants won't even dare litter, so they walk 195 feet off the property and, and do their thing there. Well, okay, wait a minute, that landlord's doing the right thing. It is clearly not a landlord issue because they don't dare step out of line on that property. They go down to the corner playground and do their business there. And I can show you places in Barre where it happens. So, like I said, this is a work in progress, council, and it's clear from, Nicholas has been furiously writing, and we will get, we've got a little bit more work to do on this, but what I haven't heard from the council is, look, we just don't like it. We just don't, we don't want to give code enforcement, law enforcement, we don't want to give them these tools. The concerns that you're raising are all legitimate concerns, but I think we can address them as we go through the process. So we'll continue the questions or comments that you have, but then
This is a very
I hope you can move it to a second reading.
Yeah, I think generally a lot of questions, but I'll look forward to the second reading. Very briefly, the mention or the description of the council hearing as a quasi-judicial hearing. I know in other situations in which we do quasi-judicial hearings as a city board of abatement, for example, we have to adopt rules of procedure about the very specific ways in which those are carried out, and they're adopted within the sort of confines of that quasi-judicial hearing. So I'm just wondering if that should be sort of described or inserted into here. And I don't think it needs to go into ordinance. Those are the kinds of things we have there's a standard template for, and we adopt it at the time of the hearing. But I think that in order to communicate very clearly what actually happens at those hearings, we should look out to that.
That's great flag, and I will also, this was straight from the St. Albans ordinance, so this is something I can check in with my
Yeah, and they may
colleagues up
have
there.
rules of
Yeah.
procedure we can.
And one note I flagged in rereading it today also was, there's no timeline on your decision, council, so I was going to suggest maybe you get 14 days, unless you want to do it all in one night. But following the conclusion of the hearing, the ordinance as drafted doesn't say by when you must issue a decision. It just says after the hearing, but maybe we want to put
should
some time
probably set a
period.
timeline for
I mean, there's got to be some sort of reference to some rule of procedure. There's got to be a rule of procedure somewhere
Yeah.
that could govern, and you could just say, like Robert's rules. We maintain our meetings in accordance with Robert's rules, so there could be something similar for the hearing that this is how you'll maintain records, take testimony, and by when you need to issue a decision. Yes, Councilor Spalding.
Question for you about, in this, we talk about if we get to the okay, first I'm going to back up. Is the quasi judicial hearing in public or in executive session?
I would assumed it was in public.
It doesn't say, but I think we should should be clear about what we should do based on our attorney's recommendation.
That's a great question. I had assumed, I shouldn't have assumed, but I viewed it as a public hearing like other they tend to be public, so.
I've been in quasi-judicial hearings
Yeah.
on
They go
school
both ways,
board, and those have all been executive session. So in my head, I was thinking executive session, but this may not fall under that.
Dealing with minors is a little.
Well, and that might be part of it.
Little different deal.
My other question is about if part of the heart of what we're trying to get to is absentee landlords, because that feels like some of what we're trying to get to. Is there a requirement, and I apologize, I don't know this, is there a requirement that absentee landlords, people who are not local, have to have a property manager?
Yes.
They do.
They have to have a local representative. They have to have someone, and, and it doesn't apply to me, so I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it, but they have to have someone, either they can be in the city in half an hour, something where.
They're local.
Yeah, like if they live in California, well, you got to have someone, you've got to have some sort of management representative who, if Nick Copping says, look, I've got fire detectors going off down here and I need someone here now.
Yeah.
They got to come. So you do have to appoint someone.
So that would be who we would expect to show up to these hearings?
This says property owner. I
property
assume the
owner.
property owner could send
Shall have an
a
opportunity.
representative, just like property owner could send an attorney and say, I choose not to attend. That's why I asked about subpoena
Okay.
authority, so that if we said, this is pretty serious, looking at the weight of the evidence, we think it would be in the property owner's best interest to be here, and we think it would be a mistake for them to send a representative, can we subpoena them? And say, well, now you have to come here.
Okay.
Or in the case of the criminal tenant or criminal landlord, can we get the criminal? Can we subpoena the criminal or the charged or the convicted? Can we subpoena them and say, no, you're not slinking out of this. We want to see you.
Yeah, I think we need to be clear about what
Yeah.
our expectation is.
Like I said, I certainly recognize, counsel, it is a work in progress, but, and interestingly, the one question I didn't ask my counterpart in St. Albans, have you ever had a hearing? That's the one question. As I'm sitting here, I'm like, I never thought to ask that question. Have you ever had a hearing, and how did it go, and what was the outcome? So, happy to answer more questions, counsel, whatever you would like to do. But if you're so inclined, if someone is so inclined to make a motion in a second, we will move this on to a second reading.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? And please feel free to take your time if you have more questions, but I got a feeling we'll have time for a lot more questions. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, thank you very much. Motion carries. Council will move on to item 8C on the agenda. This is the flood resiliency plan. Councilor Guston.
Absolutely, thank you, Mayor. All right, so small but vital one this evening. While the manager's calling up the PowerPoint, this is an update on the public safety building access. One of our lessons learned from the '23 flood is that when the flood is bad enough, our emergency vehicles can't get out to Main Street to do their job and be safe. So we moved in improving emergency access. This has actually been referenced in a couple of other hazard mitigation plans and has been a priority project for a little while. So we moved it on to actionable with the most recent update of the flood plan. And the manager has
Thank you.
update this evening.
Thank you, Councilor Guston. Yeah, so this is, slide 1 here just tells you the exact text from the plan. And then this, Councilor Guston mentioned that this became a very big priority after our experiences in '23, particularly, and in '24, where we were, the public safety building became an island, and it just became really difficult to get materials we needed in and out of there. We had staff, dispatch staff, who very bravely stayed in the building and protected it, and they were stuck there as well. And so having this public access has been a big priority for us, and we are very happy with the update today to be able to show that it is nearly done. The project in the timeline of the work was to be completed by DPW staff, and the construction sequence was as follows. And the timing was great when we set the schedule for these, and it worked out great that we were done the week that it's happening. So tree clearing began this week, and that was completed. Stump removal began the week before that, I believe, and that was or right after that, and that was completed as well. We installed a culvert up there, and the road shaping was also done this last week, actually. We will be doing a little bit more gravel road surface installation in the spring, depending on when we can get up there. And then finally, I didn't list it on here, but we will also be installing a gate at the top. And we do hope to get to that by in the next couple of weeks, because the idea is that, I just want to be very clear that this is only an emergency access. We don't expect to be using this road on a daily basis. This is not going to be used by the police or fire department to get, you know, to sort of as a shortcut up that hill. This is really only for emergency use, and so it will be gated off unless it is needed. Hopefully, we never need to use that gate. We will be plowing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Driver's going to have to open the gate.
Close the gate.
Yeah. So I guess we will have to open it, unfortunately. This is just the aerial overhead of where this is all going in. As I think we all know too well, North Main Street was just impassable especially during 23, and that meant that we couldn't get in or out of the public safety building, and our dispatch staff were stuck there while they were performing their vital functions. Meant we had to do a little bit creative work to get to fire department equipment that's stored in the building, et cetera. So this is just that red line's a visual of roughly where that road has gone in. And this is some visuals of the work happening last week. This is the first pictures of you. You can see the asphalt there from the edge of the parking lot of the public safety building looking up the hill. You can see the culvert that was installed and the turn, the right turn up to the top there, and the grading that's going on. So this is already, drivable if needed. Like I said, they're going to do some work in the spring to tidy it up. I guess the other thing I would add here, should have mentioned, is not to harp too much on FEMA, but we applied for this project to be a mitigation project. We think it's a mitigation value to be able to access a public safety building in an emergency, and FEMA didn't see it that way. So we bid this work out. It was going to cost us $45,000 to do this road, and we said, forget that, our guys will do it. And so, obviously there's always an opportunity cost, right, that they could have been doing something else for a week. But I think this was a good use of their time, and I think, unfortunately, it highlights some of the frustrations we all feel with FEMA, which is, this seemed like a pretty slam dunk mitigation project that they didn't see that way. And so, nonetheless, our very able crews were able to take care of this, and we're very happy that this one, I think, almost at the point of checking off the list, maybe once we get that gate up there. But the crews did a great job getting this done.
Just for a little history, when I was in my youth, that was our major sliding trail.
Yes.
Now
Counselor.
they've just smoothed it out for you.
Yeah.
Much
And one day I'd
It's
come
gonna be
down and
plowed.
all of us would be on the sides and we'd all wreck one person. Some turns. But that was the major, when I saw that, I couldn't believe it. That's where we used to do that.
I remember the grade being a lot steeper when we were kids, but
Yeah, well, the
I guess
hill,
not.
You were a lot smaller.
That's true. I'm like, that seems like a pretty steep grade, but it's really not. No, it's nice job. They did a good job.
they did a
Yes,
great job.
Counselor.
That's fantastic. I wonder if you could explain the note on the previous slide that said the fire vehicles will still require repositioning.
Yes, so the idea also is that we would probably, we would deploy to the auditorium in the case of a severe emergency, right, where, we're talking 23 scope. The idea would be make a decision to get out to the auditorium when we could. This is going to be passable for some of our utility trucks. This is going to be passable for our police department cruisers, maybe an ambulance. This is not, the idea is not that we would really remain based at the public safety building. For some of the bigger fleet, like a fire truck, the engine's going to have a hard time making this turn up there. So the idea is we still have to make a decision to get everything out of harm's way. This is going to allow the staff to get back in for equipment, for gear that they store there. This is going to allow the cruisers down if they need to. And then, of course, the fire department has utility vehicles that they'll be able to drive in and out to haul things that they need. So, unfortunately, the idea is in a 23 situation, still probably have to set up some footprint at the auditorium, but we will have, we won't lose the access that we lost a couple years ago. So, thank you.
Any, yes?
So I want to confirm what I'm looking at. It spits out into the parking lot of the North Barre School? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and we talked to the owner before doing this, obviously, because we'll need to use their property as well to get in and out. And very, very accommodating to help us make this happen.
So it's just those two, it's our property and their property,
Correct.
that's it? That's
Correct.
impacted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Final question. I know we've already got a ribbon cutting plan for DPW, but could we do a ribbon cutting when the road is done?
Absolutely. The more the better. Yeah.
Good. Any other questions, council? Okay, thank you very much. And council will move on to item 8D on the agenda. This is discussing the fiscal year 27 budget survey. You did have
Yes.
last year's budget survey in your packet, council. Mr. Manager, it's all yours.
I think I had it possibly up to display as well. It might be easier for people online to see it. See if I can get it up on the screen. There it is. So, yes, thank you. Last year, I'm not sure if the city had done it before, certainly first time in my tenure that we did a budget survey. I thought it was helpful to get a pulse of where people were, get a pulse of resident priorities, and what people valued, over what things they valued over other things that we may not be able to afford. So I think it's a great idea to do another survey. We would love to get this out in the next couple of weeks, just to have as much time out there for the survey as possible. And I think there were certainly some surprises last year when we got the results, some things that ranked higher than others in terms of, when we asked people to choose amongst a litany of services, what they ranked higher versus lower. Certainly some things I didn't expect. So I think it's valuable to get a sense of where residents are, get their temperature, maybe change some questions around to see if there were, if there's things that we can ask better, things maybe we want to change. So overall, just curious to hear your feedback on, I imagine most everyone's interested in doing this again. I think really the feedback I'm looking for is any changes to the questions that you would like to have us draft up. The other thing I'll just add very quickly is I've been working with Christina. Christina will be here at the next council meeting to give you a year-to-date update on the budget. It'll be your first chance with her to talk on the numbers. And then she and I have scoped out the budget development timeline, and we expect to get this going right at the first meeting in January, a little bit earlier than last year. And so basically from January through April, this will be obviously the big focus, which is one of the reasons we want to get this out in the field now. We wouldn't expect to have results back for the first budget meeting that the council does, but certainly would want it back early enough in the process that it can inform your deliberations as well. So as I said, really, I put this in the packet as a reference to what we asked last year. Really want to hear from you, council, is if there's anything we should change, and if we can do it in a way that's that works within the software we use. So
There's really, the only thing that I noted, and I don't know why I didn't notice it last year, although we developed it earlier, there's nothing in here about flood mitigation.
I was going to say that.
Like zero.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And there's so much we could say about flood mitigation because there are a lot of different type projects. And, we actually have a list of, I believe, 10 or so that almost run neck and neck in terms of, okay, what order. I mean, some are obviously a higher priority than others, but then there are others where it's kind of you want to get them all done, but there are projects, probably at least 5 I can think of, that are that are sort of six of one, half dozen of the other. There's none that, it's like, it's hard with these 5 projects to, oh, look, Bernie Sanders.
He called me earlier.
He did, yeah, town hall. So if we could just, and maybe work with Councilor Guston on this,
happy to.
because just come up and maybe even a whole section where we're not necessarily asking you to make budgetary decisions, but we'd like to know how you feel about different flood mitigation projects or what the city's done to date for flood. We have done some buyouts. We are doing, we completed this project. How do you feel about the city's completed these projects? How do you feel about that?
Great.
I like it. I want you to do more. Waste of money. Don't do any more. I'd just like to know.
Perfect.
Yeah. So maybe even, I don't know, maybe even like I said, it doesn't really have to do with the budget, but as long as you've got people on the hook and
Right, you
asking
gotta
their
cut the
opinions.
volumes.
Yeah, and so my initial thought in response to the survey was that I think it's still pretty good. What I would be interested in seeing as an addition, and this might dovetail nicely into questions about flood resiliency, is I was kind of tossing in my head the idea of a question of, I would pay more in taxes to invest in this, like a deliberate, because our questions right now are about cutting.
Right.
Like, think about cutting this, but I would be curious what a question of, I'd be totally okay with paying a little more, and the sections could be roads, flood
Well, we're
resiliency,
doing
public
150,000 a year.
safety.
We're doing 150,000 more in roads this year, and
Yeah.
we're not really going to have a vote on it. It's just going to have, we need to.
Yeah, yeah.
But the answer either could surprise us or could reaffirm that what we're doing there. But I would be curious to ask people to think expansively instead of contracting.
Yep, I agree. No, I think those are all good suggestions, so yes.
Yeah, on that topic, I'd like to see some questions about investing in a walkable downtown. Because we had that, interesting event with the city planner, people who were looking at the downtown area. They had a lot of good ideas about infill and
Yeah,
infill
I agree.
development and other ways to do that. I'd like to see something like that.
Yes,
I just have a question about the actual survey itself. The
Yeah.
first question, which of the following statements, are you only allowed to answer check one box?
I believe so. Yeah, because it's best describes. Yeah, and I think the form we use, I believe, only allow, well, you know what? I might be able to change that.
I'm just curious if someone
Yeah,
who
we can do
lives
check
here
boxes.
and also owns a business here or works here, would be interesting to know, like, oh, you work here and you live here and you pay for, like, and then my other question about how do you get city news alerts? I'm assuming that's also like you can check multiple boxes?
Yes, that is one we can do, yeah, and that's why I realize now we can do multiple checks on the first question. I think the only issue, the way the data spits out is not super great. I think I shared it with you last year. It's
Yeah.
really not user-friendly.
Did you want to?
I think one reason I may have done the first question this way so we could get an actual count of who was a resident, who wasn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can get that with the checkboxes, but I'll look into it.
Okay.
If we can, then I think that's a good.
yeah, I agree on the city news. We could do, because if you asked me to answer the question, I'd check them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So, and you're really looking at maybe what is your preferred method
Yeah.
to receive updates?
Yep.
Or how would you receive a message from the city most quickly? And if most people check Facebook, you're like, okay, we got to do more work on regroup.
Yep.
Who also would tell us, though?
Yes, Counselor.
I slightly disagree with that argument, only because when you have all of those, you then can pinpoint, like, so like if it's 110 people for regroup and 105 for social media, so so you just kind of know what your people are actually accessing as opposed to what your preferred method is. So for example, like you, Mr. Mayor, you access all of those. But for example, somebody that lives at home, was just shut in, they maybe only get the newspaper.
Right.
So they'll select that. So then you'll be able to know what the wide variety of folks that are getting that outlet in our community, or maybe people really don't get that wide variety like you do.
Yep. But it's more asking them, well, what's your preferred method? You know, because there's a lot of, when you think about the city, well, actually, Vermont Alerts, we don't, you know, that doesn't take staff time, we don't do that.
Right.
But if you think about regroup, takes staff time, website, takes staff time, social media, takes staff time, newspaper, takes staff time.
Seems like you could get both pieces of data if you just simply added to the, you know, after this question, which method do you like best?
Right, that was,
second
right, and that was the second question, which
Second
is,
question.
what is your preferred method?
Right.
You know, so
It's
you
not
currently,
an either or, but-
you have the ability to do it, you know, like I have, personally, my preferred ability is text messages from the city. Because if it's more urgent, I tend to, you know, I get a lot of emails, I get a ton of emails, but I really try to limit the text messages. So when a text message comes through, I'm more apt to check that quickly than I'm not as apt to check email as quickly. Amy, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I do see flood resilience projects in there in one of the survey questions. It is there on page 43 of the packet I'm looking at.
Last.
It's near like traffic calming equipment, things like, so it may have been in there. But actually what I was gonna suggest is, I wonder if somewhere in there, maybe in parentheses next to the budget categories, when it's asking about things to continue to fund or consider cutting, is there any easy way or room to list like what the current budget amount is? Because like I don't know what some of these things cost. So to kind of evaluate them relative, like I don't know if, you know, you might suggest cutting something because it's really expensive or because it's small or whatever, like that might affect people's judgment. And I know I could probably look it up somewhere, but most people are not going to bother looking it up. If it's easy to give a rough idea of like, is this $1 million item? Is this a $10,000 item or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can add that.
And yes,
Just very, not even really related to the survey, but oftentimes these send you to a final screen. Thanks for taking the survey. Could we put, here's how to sign up for regroup messages on
I
that?
think we did that last year.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Good.
yes, thank you.
Love that.
yeah. And
On the final page too.
Yes.
I think it might be helpful to say, is there anything that we didn't ask? that You think we should?
There's a comment.
We did open
There's a comment.
additional comments.
Additional comments. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
yes,
I think we discussed this last year, but we didn't limit the number of, we just assumed people were going to only take it one time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
we
we,
discussed that.
well, and because we didn't want to, like, if someone decided to take it at the
Right, library,
library, for
right.
instance, because they don't have a
We
computer.
can limit by IP.
Yeah, so we were just saying, we're just hoping everyone is honest and not.
Yeah, and we.
yeah, we can't go, you know, I mean, you could let me do the survey on your computer with your IP address, and I could do it on mine, and I get two surveys, so to speak, but, I mean, you really got to work at it. So if somebody wants to work that hard, fine, you can game it a little bit.
And I would encourage everyone, I think we only got 300 some responses last year. I think we can do a lot better than that. And so I think to the extent we can encourage people in our own networks and get the word out about it. Ironically, we should send it out through regroup, see what happens. But yeah, because now we're over 1,000 on regroup. So hopefully if everyone on regroup does it, we would beat that number. But yeah, I would say the only negative thing, to the extent there was one, was just the lack of participation. There was only, I believe, around 300 people who filled
Which
it out.
wasn't horrible, considering.
Yeah, for first time, yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, one other question, and I really think hard about how to ask this question, but a lot of times, you know, you ask yourself, okay, what am I doing really well? What am I doing well, and what do I stink at? And, you know, I don't know if we could work some sort of, in other words, it's not necessarily budget related, but it could be, you mentioned the walkable downtown, you know, look, the city's not working hard enough at quality of life crimes in a walkable downtown, or the city's not working hard enough at paving streets, or the city, you know, whatever it might be. And there could be things that people say, well, but here are some things that I really like about Barre. You know, you're always going to get, when you leave an open-ended question, you're always going to get people who scream lower property taxes. Same people who are saying, why don't you pave the streets? Well, okay, well, we can, and I'm sitting here saying, I want to see another $150,000 additional allocation to the paving budget. We need to get it back up to that $750,000 mark, probably closer to $1 million over the next 2 to 3 years. So, but I think those are still, you know, I think about it, and I think for the most part, there are always the smart Alex who take the survey. Most people are really sincere. You know, they're doing their best and they're trying to, so, but I'd like to, if you think about it, I'd just like to ask those sorts of questions. What do you think we're doing well? And what do you think we're doing well, but we really need to do more of? Yes.
I would just, on the topic of getting more people, I'd love to see us set a goal of 10% of city residents, so about 850 responses, I think would be a really good.
And then I'd like to
start.
see I don't know if it's possible to do this. I'd love to see a separate survey go out to the high school.
That would be
I'd
fun.
love to see, and maybe the high school could, or elementary, maybe the younger members of our community, or even, in other words, you could isolate certain older members. They may have much different priorities, but, and I get that, you know, we'll be talking about a meeting that Councilor Guston and I will be setting up with the downtown merchants. And sometimes when you sit in front of a certain group of people, they have very different priorities. But it doesn't mean that their priorities are unimportant, but you like to, you know, there's a lot of elderly people in Barre. I'd like to hear from our seniors and say, well, what are some of your concerns? I really can't afford my taxes. And then maybe we do a better job at outreach saying, well, wait a minute, we have a robust property tax stabilization program in the form of the property tax rebate, the statewide property tax rebate program. You can't be paying more than 5% of your adjusted gross income, so how do you feel you're being priced out of your home? And you start having those conversations with folks. So, yeah, so I love the idea of the survey. I mean, that's sort of our theme once we get to new business. That's sort of our theme with going around in different wards and starting up these ward meetings and having conversations with people about what's going on in their city and in particular what's going on in their neighborhood. Because like I said, the perspectives are often different. Awesome. Anything else, Council, that you'd like to see in there? We're looking to get this out. What's our drop dead date on this?
So we can,
Mr. Manager?
our next council meeting's the 9th. I can come back with a, you know, sort of a polished draft for you all to look at on the 9th.
Yeah,
and we can
whenever
get it on the 10th.
well, but if it's later than that, I mean, budget, you know when you get into budget season, so.
Yeah, so the first budget meeting for the council will be sort of that baseline meeting on January 6th.
Right.
So if we issue it on the 10th, I think the way, and I'll bring the schedule that sort of Christina and I had developed. I think we were hoping to have a discussion and the survey results for you at our last meeting in January. That way the February, March meetings could be, could incorporate the feedback from the survey. So I think we come back to you with a polished survey on December 9th. We can go ahead and issue it on December 10th. That'll give people more than a month to fill it out.
Perfect. Bern Rose, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you. How about if we ask people if they want to give us their email addresses, and when they fill out the survey, they can be entered in a raffle, and then we'll pick a person, and they can take one of the golden shovels when you have your golden shovel day in April.
Love that.
We could do that.
I'm just thinking,
Or it could be lunch with the manager or something like that. Of course, he never buys, so you know, you'll have to bring some money.
I just think that so often people don't participate in surveys because they go, well, what good is it? Nobody really cares what I have to say, or something that, I mean, it's important to you all and it's important to me, but what gets people to do and participate in something like that? And I thought if we could think of something fun to put on the other end, that was just my thought. Anyway.
That's a great idea. Thank you. I think we'll take you up on that. We'll figure out a way to create can each completed survey create like a unique ID that it prints out at the end saying, you've been entered, you've been entered in this, you completed the survey, thank you, you've been entered in this. This is your number, and we're gonna randomly generate a matching number?
I don't know if it can do that. If we do, we would probably need to get us some sort of contact information, but we could make it optional.
Yeah.
So if people don't want to enter, then they don't have to do
Yeah.
that, so.
Yeah, if they want to enter.
Yeah, yes.
One last question. Can we, at that last page that said, thank you for taking the survey, make sure you sign up for regroup, do you want to be entered, blah, blah, blah. Could we also say, please check back to this link and have a link that will have more budget information to make sure that they know where to go, they know where they're, I don't know. I want people who are not necessarily tuning into city council meetings, not necessarily reading the paper, to recognize that there's a place that they can go on the city website. Is there a place they can go?
There is a place on that, yeah, we can certainly,
Just to sort of
Link it, yeah.
help them to know, okay, do you want to find out what happened? Do you want to find out how the budget is going? Check back.
absolutely, yeah, we can send that, we can put that on the landing page, yeah. Link it to our budget website.
And you could also send out the link in regroup.
Yes, that will do. If everyone in regroup responds, that should be over 1,000 responses, so.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
Yeah, that would be-
More information.
Oh, yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else, council? Okay, then we'll move on to upcoming business. So as I mentioned, Councilor Guston, you want to grab this one?
Absolutely, thank you. So we had talked a little bit at previous council meetings, both in the general idea of finding ways to get out and learn from different communities in Barre City and talk to folks, and then more specifically, we had talked a little bit about talking to merchants and other people in our downtown. And so thanks to some support from Tracy Lewis and the Barre Partnership, we have set next Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. This is Tuesday, the 25, thank you, 25th. 25th at the Barre Social Club. In the back part, there will be breakfast items, coffee and tea, and would invite folks to give us feedback about the downtown, what we as council could do to help support both a thriving business and residents of the downtown, thriving downtown community, and also any concerns that folks have. And also, it's sort of, I'm thinking of it as like the top of the roller coaster that leads to the holiday season for all of our downtown folks. So hoping they also feel deeply appreciated as small business owners and contributors to our community and our local economy, and come by and have some breakfast food and sit down and feel heard and seen with their ideas and their concerns. So to repeat, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Tuesday, November 25th at the Barre Social Club in their back room.
Yeah, and we will be warning that, council, just for kicks. Well, normally, like if it was the Barre Partnership doing it, I wouldn't, but because this is a council initiative, I feel like, if there are a number of councilors there, we're the ones who called the meeting. So we will be warning it, just, yeah. We'll warn it to keep us on the right side of everything, and then we'll be.
It'll have to be a special meeting.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just that it'll have to be a special meeting. The idea is not that we're all sitting behind a table waiting for people to come, but rather that we are having one-on-one thoughtful conversations with folks, reflecting and listening.
Yeah, we'll just warn it, so that if we get into a discussion and there's a back and forth amongst a quorum of the council, if there happens to be a quorum there, then no one can argue that we were discussing city business without a warned meeting, so no big deal. And then we'll continue that meeting. We'll be looking throughout budget season to, in our off weeks, to sort of, do in the North End what we did down at the Mutua Club. So maybe they'd be kind enough to host us again, and we could do something in the North End. We could do something, not sure where we'd do it if we were, we might have to do it here because there's really not, the meeting place, the History Center?
Ward 2?
Ward 1.
Oh, Ward 1.
Okay.
History Center's in
I
Ward 2.
suppose.
Spalding High School
Yeah,
is in
so we
Ward
could
1.
do Spalding High School in Ward 1 and, sort of take the show on the road a little bit and talk to a little bit, promote the survey, encourage people to complete the survey, and also just get a sense, sometimes through a very quick 5-minute conversation, you get a much greater sense of how people are feeling than even through a survey. So we'll be doing that as well.
I'd
And
offer my, I'd offer my showroom too.
oh, nice. Yeah, that could work up in Ward 1. I mean, we could do more than one. So thank you for that. And then lastly, council will be talking about legislative priorities at our next council meeting. You know, that's really important. Please come to that meeting armed with some ideas. You know, we are going to be having a team, I assume the council will approve a team at the legislature monitoring legislation that is near and dear to the city's heart and important to our viability. I assume that's going to be your recommendation again this year?
I think so. It's worked really well for us.
Yeah. You know, it's important. Things move so quickly in the legislature. And, you know, fortunately with the Mayor's Coalition, we have a good group of people who will call me regularly and say, you know, so-and-so is taking testimony today, and it wasn't even necessarily on the agenda. Or, you know, so-and-so is down here dissing Barre, and you better get down here and straighten them out. You know, one of the big things that I'm going to be looking for is some sort of regional, I've been thinking a lot about flood mitigation, a little bit of a play on the conversation we had at the last council meeting, Councilor Guston, which was more of a regional approach on flood mitigation. You know, we're 3 square miles here in Barre City. There is, once water reaches our city, there's not a whole lot we can do to mitigate at a certain point, but we can do a lot to mitigate by regulating those municipalities, and it would mean some sort of contribution, some sort of regional approach where the municipalities that are sending the water to Barre City as we're building up, and not just Barre City, other municipalities as well, Montpelier, Berlin, it doesn't matter, but we've got to take more of a regional approach. This you know, every town and city for him or herself approach just isn't going to work. Even to the point where I'll say, look, if Barre City had to buy land in Berlin for a flood mitigation project, tax-free, always, not even a question about it. And maybe the regional approach, they have to contribute on some level. So going to be looking for that, obviously going to be looking for housing initiatives. We got a long ways to go in the court system in terms of accountability and just getting rid of this backlog. You know, landlord tenant, we talked a little bit earlier this evening about landlord doing better with landlord and tenant laws. I think for me, it's all about accountability. I mean, all the way around. When you talk about the justice system, you know, accountability, our obligation to neighbors who are unhoused. Well, it's all about accountability. So that's sort of, I'm going to be talking a lot about that during this legislative session. And other than that, council, if there's nothing else yes.
Oh, just one update, Mayor. Next meeting, also very excited, in addition to Christina doing a year-to-date and your first chance to talk to her numbers. Carly, Larry, and Matt, our assessing team, will be here to update you on, give you sort of an update on the reappraisal process that's ongoing. There's going to be a lot going on in the next year. Want to educate everyone on the dais, everyone watching, about sort of what to expect from the process. So very excited that they'll be here, the experts, to be able to sort of walk you through what we'll be going through in the next year.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes.
And well, and just a preview for the next meeting as well, the manager and I had set that as one of the flood resiliency plan priorities is to improve our support of our city staff and make sure that we have the right staff in the right places to be doing the flood resiliency work that we need to. And we thought that would tailor beautifully with the beginning of a budget conversation. So that will be our next flood resiliency plan.
We need more.
Yes, that will be the baseline, but beyond that.
Yes, Councilor.
I also wonder if there would be an opportunity, like we're doing with the downtown businesses, you were talking about students, should we do it with the Barre City employees as well? Is there an opportunity for council to talk to the people that we don't get to?
About the budget?
About anything?
That's You know, there is, I mean, first of all, we always want to be in a position to listen.
Yeah.
My favorite time to do that, honestly, is when we're doing Nicholas's evaluation. And I'm a big one on having the employees evaluate Nicholas as well. I think it's tough if we try to have a direct conversation with them because there's a chain of command, and that can be a little tough. Believe me, I found out before myself that sometimes they are well-meaning, but you give them an audience and things tend to take on a life of their own very quickly. So I'd probably, great suggestion. Look, we want to listen, you know, everyone has a place at the table. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has a part in the overall conversation of how we make this city work. But I'd have to defer to the manager on that one. And I just, like I said, I want to make sure that the chain, even when I'm, you know, if I'm emailing a department head, I always, and I'd encourage you all to do the same, I always copy Nicholas as a courtesy. You know, there are times where I've just got to ask Brian a question, so, you know, I'm not going to talk to Nicholas and say, could you ask Brian this for me, so, you know, so I can burn up 15 minutes of Nicholas's time. But if I'm communicating with them, I always show him the courtesy of copying him. So, but good question and good thought. Okay, Councilor Deering, it's your turn, roundtable.
Oh, man, happy snow. Get your winter tires on. Do everyone a favor. I'll end with that.
Councilor Hillgardner.
I just want to make people aware of something that's going to be happening actually in Northfield, Vermont, at St. Mary's Episcopal Church on December the 6th, which is a Saturday at 3. There will be a benefit concert, which is to support the Habitat for Humanity house that's being built there. And it's a performance by Cameo Baroque, with which I play, and a couple of other people we know.
Fantastic.
So that should be, that it's a sponsored jointly by the St. Mary's Episcopal Church and Cameo Arts Foundation. It's free. Every penny that is donated goes to the beneficiary. There's no cut for overhead. So I just want to encourage people to come. A program of beautiful Baroque music for Baroque trio, which is 4 people. Ask me how the Baroque counts sometimes.
Thank you. Councilor Guston.
My mechanic couldn't meet me until December, so I'm running without snow tires for the moment, but driving safely anyway. This week I started volunteering with the warming shelter that's held at the Church of Good Shepherd that started up last year, and which has always been a deeply rewarding and important thing to be doing. And I will say that so far, far more people than this time last year when it started up. And I think that is a reflection of something good, which is the increased communication and the increased awareness of the availability of city and other services, and something bad, which is that the need is clearly very deep. So.
Thank you. Councilor Spalding.
I have a few things. Tomorrow night, the Washington County Senators are going to be here in Barre at the Labor Hall, and we would encourage you to come and have a conversation with them. It's a listening session, much like what you're talking about for City Council. Thursday night, and I apologize that I've been very remiss in getting this publicized, we're continuing our conversation at the library about people who are unhoused, maybe living in poverty, maybe housed, unhoused. And there's a few articles that the director of the library, Kristen Bauman, has selected for us to read and discuss. So I would encourage you to go to the library, contact her. And then my very favorite, most favorite event of the year is on Saturday, and they've moved it to the Opera House. It's the worst song ever. It is the most fun you can have. Tickets are $10, general admission. You get to be in a beautiful setting at the Opera House, and you get to hear really fun, worst songs ever. And it's all subjective, you know? So it's not like it's an awful song or the people who are singing it are awful. It just their interpretation of what they think the worst song ever is. And it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. So bring your friends. They donate the money. It's really great. So I would encourage you to participate in that.
Fantastic. Councilor Ruthier.
A little positive economic news. Last week, a survey came out from Walmart and Target and said that Thanksgiving goods and services were down 25% from last year.
Down.
Costs are down.
Oh, wow.
Fewer items. Fewer items, yeah.
Fewer items.
Far
down.
fewer. They basically decided to think, I'm sorry, I don't mean,
No.
they basically listed the components of a Thanksgiving meal and said it would cost X amount, and it was 8 fewer items in the Thanksgiving meal this year as opposed to last year. So that's how they got to the 25%.
they're
Sorry to ruin the
Yeah.
good news.
They were individualized.
It's all good. Speaking of which, it is Thanksgiving next week, which kicks off our holiday season. So on Friday, Barre Partnership will be hosting Barre Merry Holidays. We'll have their Christmas parade, our holiday parade. So they're doing that on Main Street and then doing the holiday tree lighting. So that will be a lot of fun. But on Thursday, in case you didn't get the memo, it is Thanksgiving. So number one, donate. Everyone sitting at this table has a roof over their heads. They have food security. And I know that because I know you all. So just take a minute to donate to others who don't. And most importantly, take a minute. I know all of you, you have beautiful families. Take a minute to appreciate them. Take a minute. Everyone, no matter how bad things may seem, and we can all have pity parties, we can all everyone can find a reason to be thankful. So find that moment sometime next Thursday and just take a minute to appreciate the people in your lives who make it all work. And lastly, thank you again to the folks who stepped up. The government shutdown is over. Whether you feel good about that or you feel poorly about that, I personally am thankful that it is over and we have we have a certain amount of certainty with regard to some of the government programs like SNAP, where folks are really caught in a lot of uncertainty. But along those lines, I am so proud of our governor and the E-Board for stepping up. We were one of, I believe, only 3 states that did that in the country, that stepped up to fill that gap. And here in Barre, we stepped up yet again because there was a 1-week gap. And when you talk about food insecurity and people being hungry, I'm never going to be stupid enough to sit here and say mission accomplished, because it's not. But the standard that I set when I first gathered everyone together in the very beginning was, I want to make sure people don't panic. I want to make sure that, and folks, you're the boots on the ground, so you can let me know if people are panicking and how worried they are. Of course, there was a heightened sense of anxiety, but even when people came to our local food shelves and they were told that, well, we're going to ration protein items for the next couple of days, so you can take 2 today, you can come back tomorrow and get 2 more, but no one got upset. No one, they all understood what we were trying to accomplish, and we did manage to accomplish that. We service, so here in Barre City, no one went without. No one was turned away, and I'm just so proud of everyone who had a part of that. So, once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then lastly, December 6th on Saturday, Christmas for Kids. You all love it. You love the name, you love the concept, you love everything about it. It is just about making sure that any child, no matter who they are, where they come from, what religion they are, I don't care. Every child in Barre deserves something. They deserve to know that someone cares. So we're going to be doing that coin drop on Saturday, December 6th, right in front of Domino's Pizza. It really is a good time. I'm going to try to get the governor to come by. His security detail always freaks out about him being in the middle of the road. Everybody loves our governor. I'm like, I should be worried more than he should. It's like, I put my sorry rear in the middle of the road and open target. But anyway, so Saturday, December 6th, so I'll apologize in advance when we hold up traffic for people, but people are always very generous, and I'll be getting on the phone earlier that week. We have some really dependable partners who have always supported us. So yeah, it's just about giving back. Yes, Counselor.
Do we have a time on that yet?
We usually get going, I get down there about 7, and we definitely get going by 8 o'clock, and we go until noon, 12:30. If we're feeling a little greedy, we might go until 1 o'clock, but in no event later than 1. So we're usually, but hey, you don't have to come down for the whole event. If you can come down for an hour, a couple of hours, we'll have coffee and donuts, and we'd love to see you, but we understand everyone has busy lives as well. So with that, council, do you need an executive session?
Very brief,
Oh,
yeah,
you suck.
on real estate. Sorry.
Okay, motion for
close.
findings would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. And a motion to enter executive session, the manager will be attending.
So
Yes,
moved.
Please. Motion to enter executive session.
So
Thank you. Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Make a motion to come out of executive session.
Councilor Ruthier, will you second, please? Thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? Councilor Spaulding?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Councilor Ruthier?
I'd like to second that one.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please
team.
signify by
Oh, we're
saying
a
aye.
good team.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Yes.